because, you know, she and Ye were so opposite. She would talk and just not care who was around, and he was very cautious and very reticent, even though he probably knew more than she did.
They established a really successful line of descendants.
It was quite a journey to get from rural to urban China through Taiwan to the United States.
Where my Ye came from is very poor and less educated than the people on my Nainai's side. So yeah, Ye really married up.
I remember a lot of times we'd be going somewhere and Grandma would be like
way out in front,
30 yards in front, you know, kind of walking along, and I'd see her silver curly hair, and she'd just go off, wouldn't even look back.
Yeah, she would stand in the street.
Yeah,
that was how she lost her part of her foot.
Yeah.
They really loved the U.S. and what it had to offer, and really appreciated it. And the ways that it came out was that, for example, my grandfather drank a Coca-Cola every single day.
I think about how unlikely it is, or it was, that that they could have made it out. So many moments along the way, and Ye's treacherous path to even making it out of the mainland.
Family get-togethers were always joyous occasions, and whether they happened in San Diego when they were living there, or whether you know, when they would happen later in Hawaii. There were these wonderful, joyous times, and I would say, like, I just remember being one visit where it was not the same, and it was because, you know, everybody had found out about the secret.
When I come to you with my eyes wide open, I know you will tell me the truth. It'll all be fine. We'll remember these times, live up to the dreams of our youth. Together we see through shared experience, a way for the good life to be. Close my eyes, imagine my past. The early days, they move so fast. A life is shared and forever will be, and the story is here to see. Story is here to see.
中央大学那个毕业之后，那个就跟中午结婚，中午读书，只读到这初中毕业就停止了。我中午人创劲很大。
Yeah, to define my parents, I have a very familiar terms for most of us. They are an odd couple. Ye is a gentle, complex Chinese scholar. He is a thoughtful person, but keep a lot of things inside himself. But mother is an open-hearted, kind, straightforward person. Always think for other people, not for herself. And couldn't stand Ye's zigzag ways. She got impatient and she blew up. Then Ye got frustrated. So I've seen many of them, their serious conflicts in my life. while I'm growing up. That's very hard on each of us.
What defines any of us, right? Our childhood. It's I grew up in rural China, or at least Grandpa did. I think that informed a lot of his decision-making process and how he approached life.
They had this thing, like for big special occasions, he would write a poem and she would do the calligraphy. Mom always used to say he had his head in the clouds. Like, you know, he would come up with the words and she would write them down.
It's very clear from the get-go, my father is the one that study hard and teach. That's his job. And my mother's in charge of the rest, well, including my father. So in our family, the role is very clear. My father just study, and I can remember my father study from morning till night. Sometimes just move to get food, get lunch, get dinner. My mother is in charge of everything from the kids' life to outside relationships. So that's my parents. Very clear who is in charge. My mom, okay?
我是个乡下，很落后的乡下。
They don't even have enough money to have everybody have enough soy sauce, so they just dip the soy sauce, the stone in the soy sauce, and then they sip on the soy sauce. So he comes from a very, very poor family.
He was raised by his mother and his older brother. His father passed away very early, I think below 40 years old, maybe 38, 39. And he has a second brother. I was told that his second brother passed away because he was in the field to collect mushrooms after a rainy day. And when he stick his hands into the bush to pick mushrooms, a poisonous snake bite him, and he died.
只有爷爷是出来读书的，离开家乡读书的。这大伯伯是家里面那个领导的人，也很佩服大哥伯伯。
Oldest brother is a very wise, very capable person. So he was hired by rich people at very young age to teach their children classic Chinese. Ye followed his older brother, sit in the back to also to take lessons and to have a good meal at the master's home.
My father was very good in Chinese literature from very, very beginning. At age 8, he used the toilet paper and wrote his first book because he felt he's like a little lighting bugs. So that's 萤火鸡 collection of lighting bugs. That's his first book when he was 8 years old, a Chinese poetry book.
In those days, if you can compose good poem, if you can write good essay, then you can get into a good school.
All the family resource went to him. People think that he is going to make it. He did. So he went to Tongcheng Zhongxue, which is a very famous high school. And to our understanding, that's how he got his name, Tang Chuanji. He was not Tang Chuanji at the time. He was Tang Shiyi.
In order to skip 2 years to save money, to save tuition, he borrowed somebody's diploma because that person graduated but died young.
Then he went to take the entrance exam of college. And my understanding was like he got outstanding ratings on Chinese literature is probably 100. The math was 0.
大部分让爷爷去读这个安徽大学。
That's the best college in Anhui province.
At the time, the relationship between professors and students are very close. So he received food or whatever from professors.
Probably believe Ye should, as smart as him, he should be in the top university, not a provincial university.
And then he changed from Anhui Daxue to Zhongyang Daxue, which is a better university. And Anhui Daxue, he would study history. And he moved to Zhongyang Daxue to study Chinese literature.
It is because of this transfer, his fate totally changed.
My mother came from a totally different family from my father. My grandfather was a very unique person. He was the first group of students sent by Qing Dynasty to Japan to study.
妈妈的把我到后来读了这个东京地大。
And he graduated from the predecessor of Tokyo University. His first group, 5 students went, 3 graduated, and my grandfather was one of them. Came back and become a professor, and then the dean of engineering school.
回来的时候参加这个北京大学的建立学校，是北京大学这个 modernized。
My mother grew up in that environment. Like her family was, pretty well established.
兄弟姐妹有9个人。
Nainai was just a toddler, I believe, when his mother died. She said she had a great mother. The second mother is also treated them very nicely. Grandfather married to the second mother because he needs someone to take care of the children. The first night when they got married, grandfather ran away after the marriage ceremony. He felt that his love to his first wife couldn't allow him to meet his wife, his second wife, after marriage. So he ran away for maybe a couple weeks. Then he was captured and put back together.
She was born in Beijing and then went back to Zhejiang, to Huamingquan. Yeah, so that was the time. And at that time, girls are not supposed to study.
中午读书，只读到这初中毕业就停止了。
She only have an education of 9th grade. He Xiehou is an extremely frugal person. Nainai therefore volunteered not to go to high school or university and let his brothers instead to receive higher education.
他的个性很强的人，他跟那个所交往的人多半都是他帮助別人。
At that time, Nainai was able to start teaching. After teaching in Zhejiang, she leaped from Zhejiang to teach a primary school in Shanghai. So she lived in Shanghai. That's before her marriage. And she also helped take care of the youngest son, that's Xiao Nyangjiu, who is also attending that primary school.
所以性格是很特别的人，所以在家里面他也管了很多事情。
So that was the family, and it was definitely not a poor family like my father. So my father is the lucky guy. He was introduced to my mother because one of the professors in the college really liked him. And that professor is a good friend of my grandfather.
My maternal grandfather, He Xieho, asked his good friend, he says, I have one daughter who is not married, and I want to find a good son-in-law. Do you have a good student?
So he recommended my father to my grandfather, and my grandfather looked at him and he says, I like this young man. He looks like a typical Chinese scholar.
One thing different from the elite people around that time was that he is very open-minded, willing to give his daughter's hand to a poor young man from a backward village because he sees a future in this young man.
Mm, 那时候抗战就通逃到重庆去。
After the marriage, Ye has to go home, back to Tongcheng, to visit. Theoretically, Nainai should follow him, and China was almost in chaos, so it's not safe for Nainai to travel together with Ye. So Ye went home by himself, bring some money back to his mother and the Dabobo. He left, came back, and he almost died in Anqing, where he's supposed to take a boat across the river because Anqing was bombed.
The only way to get out is to get on a boat. The railroad has already been stopped. So he was stuck in a motel. He has no ticket on a boat, so all sold out, okay? He couldn't sleep at night. Then he heard the next door was saying there's a boat leaving.
In those days, the war was quite thin. The two guys were saying, "Hey, there was a big ship in the middle of the Yangtze River. We better go. We better go now." So they pack up and go. So Ye just pack up and follow them. They ran all the way from the hotel to the side of the river, and there were many small boats. So Ye hopped on one small boat, asked the guy to row him toward that boat. By the time Ye received the ship was packed full.
Nobody follow order. You don't need a ticket because nobody's buying ticket. Everybody just jump on, trying to, you can imagine the picture. Everybody just trying to get on the boat.
People was hanging on the side of the ship.
He threw away his suitcase, all his belongings.
So Ye asked the roller to hold him up. Then went up and hold the post tight and slowly rotate himself into the ship. The next day, Anqing was totally leveled by Japanese airplane. So if Ye didn't escape that night, there would be no us. So it's a nice little family living by the street. It's 2-story. So we live on the 2nd story. And the 1st story was a dumpling cellar. So one day, the Japanese airplane came. So we all ran to the caves. But by the time we came out of caves, we saw dead bodies, and the whole street was bombed, and our house was collapsed, was destroyed, and we heard our neighbors crying underneath the rubbles. This was because when raid came, the people who doing dumplings or selling foods, they don't go to the cave because they have to prepare more food. When the people come out of the cave, they would buy, they would need food.
抗战胜利之后，爷爷这个是在那个农林部。
By the time Chong Liang and Chong Zhao was born, we live in Gedesan on a mountain hill, and the town is under the foot of the hill. The house was built by bamboo and mud. We have one room, and the kitchen is underneath the eave. The water is delivered by young people working in my father's office in bucket.
不久又是那个因为外公的关系到台湾做事。
Fortunately, again, my He Xiehou has an old friend who runs a government agency in Taipei.
台湾刚刚光复，日本人走了，所以日本式房子，住榻榻米。
And at the beginning, we occupied the whole house. It's 3-bedroom with paper door partitions. But when after 49, Mainlanders moved to Taipei. Taipei was overwhelmed, so we have to share our house with another family.
爸爸的这个，后来又转到那个师范大学教书。那时候也在这个陆军总医院做秘书。
Finally, father got a single unit in a compound. The house only has 2 bedrooms, so we have to change a bathroom for as a bedroom, a very small cube for Chong Zhao. So that small room is Chong Zhao's private room. I and Chong Liang share a room. Then we have to add a extension as a kitchen. Actually, it's very, very simple. In those days, we only have coal made into a macho, into a bowl for cooking.
My father, as I said, was the youngest child in the family, and he's the only one that left the hometown to go outside study. So each family asked my father to take one boy with him. So that's the two cousins that I had basically came to Taiwan together with my father, my parents. They spent a lot of time in our house. It must be a tremendous burden to zip his, lips, and he also zip up all the people that knows about his stories. Nobody say anything, so it must be very difficult. So he becomes sensitive. Like he would be. The most striking thing was he was drinking and he would just break into tears. And nobody knows why, right?
That part he hid from everybody until before I went back to China in 1979.
到后来发现，爸爸原来在跟妈妈结婚以前就在乡下有一个太太，那大姐是在抗战以后才联络上的。
In those days, China is facing a great transition. Many people coming from village to the city, their original marriage, the first marriage to a country girl, matched by his parents. So he requested to Double and to his mother a divorce. Believe it or not, the whole village, when they heard that father is going to marry the Beijing University's daughter, they all pressure my first mother to divorce. Coming to the United States in our time is a cumulative thing. It's not one day. You make a decision you want to come to the United States.
My oldest brother was 17 years older than me. He left Taiwan when I was 6th grade. And so is my sister. They left on the same year.
Graduate from Taiwan Daxue, of course, is a great advantage. In those days, if we don't have scholarship, our family are not going to be able to pay our tuition or our living expense.
All my siblings are very famous. So when I grow up, when I say Tang Chong something, they will say, okay, my older brother's name or my sister's name, is that your sister or brother? Yeah.
Each of us, me and my brother and sister, got scholarships because of our good record as a college student.
The child's academic success was a incredible credential for your success.
If neighbor's boy went to the United States, if your father says, oh, he is a good young man, then you know you must follow his step, otherwise you are not a good young man.
I think the two reasons. One is lead by example. My father study, he gets up and study, right? Okay. And secondly is that we have my grandfather, the Beijing University president, as our role models. So we know that he is an outstanding scholar. We cannot lose faith for him, right? Okay, so we have a very clear understanding that we need to study hard.
I have a lot of memories of them walking around holding hands very slowly in San Diego, in Hawaii, not going too fast.
And I think we must have walked a mile or 1.5 miles to get there, which, you know, at that point, Ye had his cane, and it probably took us an hour and a half or something like that to get to Burger King. And it was totally worth it, not necessarily for the burgers, but for the experience and the company.
When I was in grade school, when I was in elementary school, I would get off the school bus every day from home, and then I'd open the door and I'd come home to my grandparents.
They took good care of us when, you know, when they were watching us.
Nai was very generous about giving us allowances. So I can't remember with what frequency, but we would get a $10 allowance from her. And my parents didn't give allowance, so this was a major deal. Yeah.
I remember being stunned by how much money was in the red packets every time I opened it.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, because I'm thinking in increments of $1 or $2.
Right.
And we'd open up those red packets. There'd be like a 20 or 2 20s in there. I'd be like, whoa, grandparents.
The two of them together were also very funny in their conversations because they were an old married couple, and they would kind of hassle each other back and forth.
They were comfortable together. They had their routines. They definitely looked out for each other. And when they argued, it was like, you're full of it. No, you're full of it. You're full of it.
Nai loved to play mahjong, and that's what I remember a lot of. Also, her trying to convince me to play mahjong, even though I wasn't very interested. You know, you'd sit down and she would win.
Grandma had this mahjong table in their place in downtown San Diego, and there would be friends over a lot. Just spend hours playing mahjong.
We would visit her in Hawaii. My brother and I were, teenagers, and we would just have marathon sessions. She's an 80-year-old woman, and we'd play late into the night.
I remember a couple different moments. One where she said, "Oh my God," in the middle of a game of mahjong. Every time I think my brother and I were saying that when we get good hands.
Even when she was very elderly in her late 80s and early 90s in the nursing home, I would remember going to visit her in Beijing, and she had, I think, an arch nemesis in the nursing home who she complained about the way she played mahjong, and they were competitive about who got the most money, and she would complain about her cheating and stealing money.
I remember that Ye was very proud of his beard, and he often would sit there and stroke his beard, very sort of Confucius-like.
He also had that long pointy beard and everything that made him stand out, made people take pictures of him.
He would go from these placid still waters and stroking this beautiful white beard to heated political discussions with my dad. I mean, if they ever got into a conversation about Taiwan and Chinese politics, there would be a lot of, hands slamming down on the table, and all the women would say, "Oh, no, let's just not talk about politics."
Oh, actually, that leads me to a great story. One day coming home that night from a Burger King.
So we were riding in the car ride home, and so Ye had gotten his dander was up. He was something in Taiwanese politics was bothering him, and so he was talking to my dad. He's like, Fei, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to acknowledge me. Just, I'll talk.
He would just get on one. He would just go, and I wouldn't really be able to understand what was going on. And then at some point, you stop trying because it's too hard. We got home and Ye went to bed. And I was like, "Dad, what was he talking about?" And he goes, "Oh, he was just talking about Taiwanese politics." And at the very beginning of it, he always tells me, he's like, "Listen, son, I'm going to talk for a little bit. You don't have to listen even. You don't have to say anything. Just be quiet and let me talk." And then he just talked for 20 minutes straight.
So, a big issue with my grandparents when I was growing up was there were 3 boys and 1 girl, and the boys had all had daughters, and our mother had boys. The concern, of course, which happens in both Chinese and Western traditions, was that the name would die out. And there was a point at which Mom asked me to change my last name to Tang.
Wow.
And announced it at a big family gathering that was what I was doing.
My biggest memory of Ye and Nai that had an impact on my life was when my brother was born. I wanted a girl. So they were on the phone, they heard that the baby was born, and then they heard it was a boy. And they were really excited about this baby being a boy. And I just didn't understand what the big deal was because I was a girl. Like, what were the rest of us, chopped liver, you know?
So one time, my mother had to see somebody out of town. Okay, very rare case. And so my father went to the payroll department to collect his paycheck. At that time, there's no bank account, so it's all in cash and put in the yellow envelopes. The lady over the counter says, "I don't know you. Never seen you." Professor Tan, no, it's a woman. Have never seen you before. So, but finally, I think he showed the chop, and I guess, you know, the woman finally believed, probably asked somebody else, you know, "Is this Professor Tang? Are you sure this is the guy?" So my mother's in charge of everything, okay?
I know that they love every and each of us. Just from time to time, they don't know how to say it because they have never said, "I love you." They said, "Guai," that means good boy or good girl. They hardly give us any hugs. I don't remember any kisses in my life from parents.
I remember I get off from the bus, he probably had to hold me because I was too short. It was raining hard, and he held me. That's the first time, the only time that I remember he held me.
As I said before, they fight a lot of times. But when I think back, it's quite natural for them to fight. In those days, life is so difficult.
At the beginning, the rocky part of their relationship was money. My mother is, if you look back, is probably not the best money manager. My father is the worst one in the world, okay? So, but in relative comparison, my mother's a better one. So my mother's in charge of everything, so my mother makes all the decisions, and she is very generous to, according to my father, her family side. So a lot of people come and borrow money and do not return money to my mother. And of course, you know, the money is a very important part of their life struggling. We didn't have money.
I really appreciate that they kept their marriage intact to the end. They didn't pretend in front of their children.
The second part of the rocky relationship, one of the major cause, was because my mother found out that my father actually had a wife back in the hometown. So then the relationship become, of course, very sour because my mother think that she got cheated.
Mother had a rather calm reaction. Of course, she cried, but she didn't react violently. And she also supported Ye by sending money back to Zhongxiu Jieje. If Zhongxiu Jieje were a boy, I think Ye probably wouldn't be able to divorce his first wife because an heir is born to him. By the time they live in Hawaii, they're always holding hands, walk around the blocks, and all the neighborhoods know them as a loving couple.
My parents are probably pretty typical Chinese parents. They are strict in many sense, but they work hard. They have very good value. In a lot of ways, they are very liberal. They let us to make choice, which is very, very appreciated. I never knew that and in our house, we have freedom to debate. So I debate with my father a lot, for instance. for big things, okay, not small things. Not about study, okay? That is all the question.
Their most important accomplishment, I believe, is to bring up 4 of us as good citizens in the society.
My father always teach that a person's happiness shouldn't be measured by the materials that you have. It should be measured by your spiritual level, or your achievements in academic or in other life. So I think I was very lucky that I have all the right value instilled in me. Now I think back, the more I think back, the more appreciative I become to my parents. They definitely sacrifice everything they have for kids.
I didn't understand a lot of what they said, but I had to kind of fake it till you make it and understand and still figure out a way to communicate with them.
I think one other debate we had was about wrestling and whether wrestling was real.
And she said something about some white guy who had a big nose, and it turned out he understood Chinese.
I was sitting with Ye and we were waiting for an hour, and I got impatient. And we didn't have cell phones back then, so I really was just sitting and not even talking with Ye for an hour.
Either rural to urban China.
That's all of our cousins and our uncle.
Playing mini golf, which is great.
What do you think has been passed on to you through the generations because of YeYeNaiNai? Well, other than, the patchy facial hair, the boyish good looks.
I thought for sure I was toast. I thought for sure it was like, nope, go back and be a scientist.
Like how many American families can say, hey, my parents paid for my college, right?
The reason, of course, number one is I was a cute boy.
But I think later on in life, okay, they were really proud of me. Probably because of low expectations.